Hey everyone, this is Mike and today we are back in Genshin Impact as update 1.1 came out earlier this week, and it's an update that a lot of people have been looking forward to, as even though Genshin Impact when it launched is a pretty decent game, there are also a lot of negative things to say about the game as well, with it being a gacha system and a lot of those systems also being put into this game, even though a lot of people were kind of expecting this to be more of an open world ARPG PC game because of course it is on PC, Xbox, PlayStation. But it is also very much so a gacha game, and with 1.1 a lot of people were hoping that they would be making a lot of improvements to the game. In my opinion, they made some serious quality of life changes in the game so far, some that I really like about it. If you're wondering whether or not the resin system was fixed, so to say, then no, there are some changes to the resin system that I do quite like. But it doesn't necessarily give you more resin, so you're still locked behind resin when it comes down to your character and like just overall account progression, so to speak. But there are some really nice changes though that kind of speed up your progression when it comes down to playtime invested. But I'll talk about that when I talk about the quality of life changes that they brought out in this patch, which there are quite a few of, and some are actually really good and that I've been wanting for quite some time. Now, when it comes down to new content that was introduced, we have new quests, main quests, side quests like world quests. There's also a story quest when it comes down to unlocking it with the keys, like how we've had one for Jean, Klee. There was another one, but I forgot that one. But basically, the keys that you get by doing your daily commissions, and then you can use that key to unlock one of those stories. We got one of those as well. When it comes down to actual playable content, we also have a new weekly boss to fight in the main story. We get a new boss fight. And once you've completed that one, it will also unlock as a weekly boss, meaning once a week, 60 resin in order to claim all of its rewards. The boss fight itself is pretty fun in my opinion. Probably the best one out of the three so far, because I'm not a very big fan of the Valen. The wolf is alright, but also kind of has its negative side effects, I guess you could say. But this new one is actually pretty fun so far. I've only done it twice, of course, once for the story, once for the weekly. But so far I am quite enjoying it. I'm not going to say what it is, I'm not going to show gameplay of it either, in case you guys still need to play through the story and you don't want to be spoiled. Outside of that, we also got some more weekly things to do, which is coming through the reputation system. So the reputation system allows you to level up your cities, so to speak. You have one for Mondstadt and one for Liyue, and they will basically work in two ways. So you have the normal quests that you are doing, like the world quests around Liyue, for example, as well as with the main story quest and exploration and that kind of stuff. And that will rank up your reputation. But then once you've done all of those things, once you've done everything that there is to do, you can still keep ranking up your reputation by doing weekly things, and those will be bounties as well as side quests basically. You can accept 3 bounties and 3 side quests per week in total, so this will go for all of your reputation grinding, so to speak. So if you decide to rank up Mondstadt, you do your bounties there, you do your quests there, then you won't be able to spend those allowances, so to speak, on Liyue later down the week. So you really only get 3 bounties and 3 side quests per week to spend on whichever region that you want to spend them on. You can of course also say spend 2 bounties on Liyue, 1 bounty on Mondstadt, that works as well, but you just have those 3 and 3 allowances for both the bounties and the quests. When it comes down to the quests, they're pretty self-explanatory. You just like grab a quest, do it. Doesn't really take all that long, just like any normal world quest would be. When it comes down to the bounties though, they are slightly different, in the sense that you accept them. You can also choose the difficulty of the bounty, depending on how far you've already progressed into the game. If you are well into endgame, then you can of course choose the highest difficulty available over there. The higher the difficulty, the better the reward, so I would advise to at least try to get the highest difficulty. If you fail your bounty, you can just go and grab a new one, so you don't have to worry about that one either, because I did fail my first bounty because I didn't know what I was doing. So basically what you do is you grab your bounty, you go to the location on the map that is specified where your hunt mark, so to speak, is going to be, but you don't necessarily just run around and look for your target, because that was what I was doing on my very first attempt and I couldn't find my hunt mark, so to speak. What you have to do instead is you go to the area, you use your elemental sight to find traces of your mark, and then you have to go and find those traces before your mob that you need to kill will actually spawn in. So for example, it could be that you need to gather certain objectives, or that you need to kill specific enemies, and then doing these things will spawn your mob that you need to kill, and then you can go up to that mob and basically kill it. Now all of these monsters will also have some specific modifiers on them, I guess you could call it, where, for example, they could be immune to fire damage, or they could be immune to electro, but they might take bonus damage from critical attacks, or they could take bonus damage from physical attacks, something like that. So do make sure that you look at the modifiers before you go hunt them, because of course if you bring the wrong party with you, then you're not really going to be able to take them down quite as easily if half of your party, for example, can't hit them, and maybe the ones that can do damage to them are like your supports or something. So do keep that in mind. So that kind of does it for the new content. We have our quests, we have our weekly boss, and then we have this new reputation system, which also will unlock some new things for you, by the way, like new gliders that are specific to the areas, which I'm gonna try to get the one for Leeway for my Ningguang, because Ningguang's kind of like my main character that I like to use. But outside of that, we also have a bunch of quality of life things, which I'll be talking about right now. So first of all, let's talk about the resin system, as this one is kind of very important to a lot of people. First of all, they've made it so that the maximum cap of resin is now at 160 instead of, I believe it was 120 before. This of course doesn't change the fact that resin still recharges extremely slowly compared to a lot of other gacha games out there, but it is at least making it so that you don't need to spend as much time inside of the game to just be like, okay, I need to log in this morning to spend some resin, and then by the time that I go to bed I need to log in again, spend my resin, because when I wake up I don't want to be overcapped or something like that. So having a bigger bowl, so to speak, to save your resin in is going to be good for people that don't have as much time to play the game but still don't want to let their resin overcap. You might not have to log in the morning just to like quickly run a boss fight, spend that resin over there, and then basically don't be capped in the evening. Together with that, you're also able to craft condensed resin, and this will cost you 40 resin to craft, and what this will allow you to do is basically store your resin, which is going to be really good for, again, players that can't play all the time. So for example, what I usually do now is I log in the morning, I craft 2 condensed resins, and then I just play in the evening, and that's where I will use my condensed resins, as I prefer to play in the evening rather than in the morning. That's not the only thing that you can do with the condensed resins though, as this will also basically cut your grind in half when it comes down to ley lines as well as domains. You can't use these on the normal bosses in the world, like the elite bosses, the cubes, the flowers, that kind of thing. You can only use them in domains and ley lines, but what they will do is they will basically give you double the rewards when you use condensed resin, because to craft condensed resin you need to use 40 resin, which is basically twice the amount that you need to spend to claim rewards from a domain or from a ley line. So once you finish the domain, once you finish the ley line, you are given the choice to either spend normal resin or condensed resin. If you use normal resin, of course it will just cost you 20 and you'll get rewards once, but if you use your condensed resin, then you'll just be given double the rewards. If you're like me, you just got into the higher ranks as well. I just hit AR 45 when the patch came out on Tuesday, or is it Wednesday? No, I guess it was Wednesday morning that it came out. But basically, just at AR 45, my characters might not be up to par for the domains just yet, so it's a little bit harder for me to get through them. So what I can do is, before going into the domain, I craft some condensed resin, I clear the domain once, and I get double the rewards instead of having to go through the domain twice. So this will also cut your grind in half and make the game not as repetitive as it is right now. So I do think this is a pretty cool change. This will also allow you to basically save up condensed resins for the next day, because as you know, in Genshin Impact you have a daily rotation when it comes down to what is available in each of the domains when we're talking about weapon ascension and talent ascension materials. So say for example on Tuesday there isn't any material that you need, and you don't want to just go grind domains for artifacts, for example, but then for example the day after it on Wednesday, that is where you have some talent essential materials, for example a new character that you just unlocked. Then you might want to just craft some condensed resin and then spend those on Wednesday instead. Do keep in mind that you cannot craft these an infinite amount of time, so you will still need to play here or there. You can't just log in every day, craft condensed resin, and then just go ham on the weekend, but at least it will allow you to basically save up some resin for specific days that you want to play more, depending on if there are talent or weapon ascension materials on those specific days as well. So I do quite like this system, especially because it also makes it less repetitive when you are grinding for talent ascension, weapon ascension, or artifact domains, those kind of things, because they can get kind of boring if you have to run them 5 times in a row just to get some extra talent books, whereas right now you could basically run it twice and get the rewards for as if you had run it 4 times. That's not where it ends yet though, because one of my favorite ones so far is the fact that artifacts, whenever you are using other artifacts as experience fodder, you can now see all of the stats that are on there. You can now also lock artifacts. One of my major complaints about 1.0 was that I basically had a bunch of 4-star and even 5-star artifacts lying around where I wasn't really sure whether or not I wanted to use them as experience fodder because I just couldn't see the stats, and it was really annoying to basically figure out which artifacts you did and did not want to fodder. So what you had to do before was you just needed to grab your alt characters that didn't have any gear on them, throw all of your artifacts that you want to keep so far on them so that they don't show up in the fodder list. What you can do right now is you can first of all lock your artifacts so they don't show in the fodder list either. And when you are foddering artifacts for experience, you can now also check all of the stats that are on there. Insane quality of life change, basically wanted this since the start. When I was playing previously, basically all of my 4 and 5-star artifacts, I just kept them around because I couldn't be asked like trying to figure out which ones I wanted to keep and which ones I didn't want to keep and throw them on my alt characters. But right now, ever since the patch hit, I basically gotten rid of all of my unwanted 4 and 5-star artifacts, as this was a really good change. Last but not least, something that I am not really sure whether or not I like it all that much, but there are new materials that you can go and find in the world. So what you need to do is you go to the weaponsmith or the blacksmith, whatever it's called, you talk to him, and then he will show you specific mineral outcrops on the map. So they'll also be marked on the map itself when you look at them. You go over there and they seem to have more minerals in the first place, because I don't seem to remember that they actually had that many like materials out there as they do right now. But there is also a new material, a more bluish stone color, I forgot the name of it, that you can go gather over there as well. You do need to talk to the blacksmith for them to show up, I believe, or at least for them to show up on the mini-map and on the map itself as well, because outside of that they don't necessarily show up on the map every day when they respawn. But once you go and gather them, you can go back to the blacksmith and you can use these new materials to craft 6 times the amount of the highest experience stone that you can get. Problem is though, you also need to spend 10 resin in order to craft these. So on one hand, I think this is a good thing because, as I mentioned before, they spawn more of the materials, or at least it feels like that to me, so it's easier to just go out in the world and gather all of the the blue stones that you can use for the highest experience fodder, so to speak, for your weapons. But then on the other hand, the new material that they introduce into the game also uses resin to craft the experience materials, and that is something that I'm not quite a fan of, because of course resin, it's already a problem in the game, so having even more things that you need to spend resin on, not necessarily my most liked thing about this update. But overall, I do have to say that this was a pretty good update. Story was a nice ending. Finally ended the Leeway story as well, because I really didn't like that it just abruptly stopped in 1.0. So I do hope that when they release the next chapter, when it's, I believe it's Inazuma or something, that it is a completed story and that we don't need to wait like another 6 or however long it has been weeks for them to basically finish the storyline over there, like they did with Leeway. So I would hope to see that. Of course, new weekly boss is always good. Some extra content with the commission system or the reputation system I think is quite alright as well. And then of course the quality of life changes have been just amazing. And I actually forgot to mention one of the best quality of life changes as well is that you can now fix your camera distance, which is really good if you're playing on a controller. You can also turn off the battle camera so it like switches distance every time, which is really annoying. And you can also finally rebind your controls on the controller. This was one of my major complaints because it really felt weird to play sometimes. For example, the attack button being on B, the A and the B buttons, which is confirm and cancel, also being switched around, was something that I really disliked about this game. And if I were to go to some other games and play on controller over there, I would basically have like weird muscle memory, because I always had to change my muscle memory when playing Genshin Impact. So you can customize your controls, you can switch confirm and cancel buttons now as well, which I think is just some great changes. So overall, I do think that this patch was more of a quality of life patch rather than anything else. Extra content that they added was nice. Not gonna take you all that much longer to play every week because you go through it relatively quickly, but again, it's something extra to do in the game, which I always think is a very good thing. And then all of the quality of life changes with the condensed resin crafting, with the artifact foddering, and then of course the controller rebinding and the camera options were just some all great stuff. So that's pretty much everything that was in this patch. I don't think I forgot anything. If I did, feel free to correct me in the comments down below. Also let me know what you think of this patch. Is this what is going to bring you back into Genshin Impact, or if you've been playing playing all this time, what are some of your favorite points of this patch? But on that note, I want to thank you for watching, I want to thank my Patreons for supporting me, and I'll see you in the next one.